The December sun painted Venice Beach in warm golden hues, a stark contrast to the traditional Christmas scenes of snow and frost. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, their fronds adorned with twinkling lights that would shine after sunset. For Isabella Martinez, this would be her second Christmas in Los Angeles, a city that still felt like a beautiful stranger. She walked along the famous boardwalk, clutching her audition sides in one hand and her phone in the other. The screen showed 3 missed calls from her mother in Mexico City. Later, she promised herself. She couldn't handle another conversation about coming home, about how there were plenty of telenovela opportunities in Mexico, about how she was chasing an impossible dream. The sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a soothing rhythm to her troubled thoughts. Today's audition had been for a supporting role in a Netflix series, another audition where she'd given her all, only to see the casting director's eyes glaze over halfway through her monologue. The aroma of freshly roasted coffee drew her attention to a small cafe tucked between a vintage clothing store and an art gallery. The Morning Tide, read the sign, hand-painted in shades of blue and gold. Christmas lights framed the windows, and a chalkboard outside proclaimed, "Holiday Special, Horchata Cold Brew." Inside, the cafe was a warm blend of industrial and bohemian design. Exposed brick walls covered in local artwork, reclaimed wood tables, and large windows that flooded the space with California sunshine. Behind the counter, a tall man with sun-bleached hair was crafting what looked like latte art with practiced precision. "Welcome to the Morning Tide," he called out without looking up from his work. "I'll be with you in just a second." Isabella watched as he finished the design, a perfect pine tree in the foam, and handed it to a waiting customer. When he finally looked up at her, his smile was as warm as the December sun outside. "What can I make for you?" he asked, and Isabella noticed the name tag on his denim apron read, "David." "The horchata cold brew sounds interesting," she said, attempting to push the failed audition from her mind. You know horchata?" His eyes lit up with interest. "I'm from Mexico City," she explained. "Though I have to say, I've never had it mixed with coffee." "Then you'll have to let me know if it lives up to traditional horchata," he said, beginning to prepare her drink. "I spent some time experimenting with the recipe. Wanted to create something that bridged cultures, you know?" As she watched him work, Isabella noticed the surfboard mounted on the wall behind him, decorated with Christmas ornaments. The sight made her smile. It was so perfectly I. "You surf?" she asked. "Every morning before opening the cafe," David replied. "Best way to start the day. Though lately, the water's been pretty cold." He handed her the drink, which was topped with a light dusting of cinnamon. "On the house," he added. "In exchange for your expert opinion on my horchata interpretation." Isabella took a sip and closed her eyes. The familiar sweetness of horchata blended perfectly with the rich coffee notes, creating something entirely new yet somehow familiar. "It's amazing," she said honestly. "Like Christmas in Mexico, but different." "Different can be good," David said, leaning against the counter. Something in his tone made her look up and meet his eyes. "Sometimes the best things happen when we're willing to try new combinations." Over the next hour, as the afternoon crowd thinned out, Isabella found herself sharing stories with David about her journey from Mexico City to LA, her dreams of acting, and even today's disappointing audition. In turn, she learned how he'd left a corporate job in San Francisco to open this cafe, combining his love for coffee, surfing, and community. "You should come to our Christmas market this weekend," he said as she prepared to leave. "Local artists, live music, good food. It's something we do every year for the community." "I'd like that," Isabella replied, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The next few days passed in a blur of shifts at La Guadalupe, the Mexican restaurant where she worked, and preparation for another audition. But on Saturday evening, she found herself back at the Morning Tide, which had been transformed into a magical space. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, and local vendors had set up booths selling everything from handmade jewelry to original artwork. David spotted her immediately. "You came." He was wearing a Santa hat with his usual denim apron, and somehow the combination worked. "Come on, you have to try Maria's tamales. They're almost as good as my horchata cold brew." The evening was filled with music from a local band playing Latin jazz versions of Christmas carols, the chatter of the diverse Venice Beach community, and the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with Southern California's mild winter. Isabella found herself relaxing, laughing more than she had in months. As the market was winding down, David asked if she'd like to take a walk on the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, and Christmas lights were beginning to twinkle along the boardwalk. They walked close to the water's edge, talking about their favorite holiday traditions. David described childhood Christmases in Maine, with real snow and frozen lakes. Isabella spoke about midnight mass in Mexico City, the taste of champorado, and the warmth of family gatherings. Do you miss it? David asked softly. Every day, Isabella admitted. But I also love it here. It's complicated. Life usually is, he agreed. But sometimes complicated things lead to the best results. Like horchata cold brew. She laughed, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed her agent's number. Isabella answered, her heart racing. David watched as her expression changed from confusion to shock to joy. When she hung up, she was trembling slightly. I got the part, she whispered, then louder. I got the part. The Netflix series. They want me for the role. David whooped and picked her up in a spontaneous hug, spinning her around as the last rays of sunlight painted everything gold. When he set her down, they were both laughing. We have to celebrate, he declared. Wait here. He jogged back to the cafe and returned with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a blanket. They sat on the sand, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. There's just one thing, Isabella said, cradling her cup. They're filming on Christmas Day. David nodded, understanding. Your first big break. My family, they're not going to understand. Christmas is sacred. Missing it for work, for acting. Then we'll just have to make our own Christmas, David said simply. When's your call time? 7 a.m. Perfect. That gives us all of Christmas Eve. True to his word, David organized what he called a California Noche Buena at the cafe on Christmas Eve. The local community, many of whom had nowhere else to go for the holidays, gathered to share food and stories. Maria from the market brought her famous tamales. Someone else contributed a turkey, and David made horchata cold brew for everyone. The cafe was filled with laughter, music, and the kind of warmth that comes from chosen family. Street artists who regularly displayed their work at the cafe gifted Isabella with a beautiful portrait of her. The jazz band from the market played a mix of traditional carols and Latin Christmas songs. As midnight approached, David pulled Isabella aside and led her up to the cafe's small rooftop garden. From there, they could see the Venice Beach Ferris wheel lit up in Christmas colors and the moon reflecting off the Pacific. I have something for you, he said, handing her a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful handmade coffee mug, painted with scenes from their evening walks on the beach. On the bottom was written, "For new traditions." David, it's perfect, she whispered, touching the painted waves gently. There's more, he said, pointing to the horizon. Right on cue, fireworks began to explode over the Santa Monica Pier, reflecting off the ocean in a spectacular display. How did you arrange this? Isabella asked in wonder. I didn't, he laughed. That's just LA being LA. But I did time your gift for it. The next morning, David was waiting outside her apartment at 6 a.m. with coffee and pan dulce. For luck, he said, walking her to her car. Break a leg. And text me when you're done. The cafe's hosting an orphan's Christmas dinner, and there's a place saved for you. That evening, after a long but exhilarating day of filming, Isabella drove back to Venice Beach. The cafe was glowing with warmth, and she could hear laughter and music spilling out onto the street. Through the window, she could see David in his Santa hat, serving plates of food to a diverse group of people. Other entrepreneurs who couldn't go home for the holidays, artists, surfers, and various members of their unique beach community. As she walked in, David looked up and their eyes met. His smile was brighter than all the Christmas lights combined. Welcome home, he said, and Isabella realized that here, in this unconventional space, with these unconventional people, she had indeed found home. Later, they walked on the beach again, the waves providing a gentle soundtrack to their conversation. The moon was full, casting a silver path across the water, and the palm trees along the boardwalk twinkled with Christmas lights. Thank you, Isabella said softly, for showing me that different can be beautiful. David took her hand, and together they walked along the shore, their footprints marking the sand until the waves gently erased them. Above them, stars twinkled in the clear California sky, and somewhere in the distance, someone was playing Feliz Navidad on a guitar. It wasn't the Christmas either of them had grown up with. No snow, no traditional family gatherings, but it was perfectly, uniquely theirs. A California Christmas story, written in sunshine and salt air, coffee and community, dreams and new beginnings.